After e4, c5, d4, and the Smith-Morra is on the board. This is a very annoying opening. Black needs to take the pawn, and then white will play c3. Although white can also play knight f3. We will go through that soon enough. After this c3 move, we take the pawn, and so basically white is giving up a pawn for development. This is annoying, not because it's supposed to be a strong opening, but rather because if you don't know what to do against it, you can have a lot of defeats against it. So after knight takes back, black continues with e6. It's important to put control over f5 and d5, especially d5 will be a future target. So, and of course a move like e5 by black will not be good because it leaves this d7 backwards pawn forever weak. So after e6, white goes on with the moves that I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with, which basically knight f3, bishop c4, and then queen e2 and the plan of rook to d1. These moves will happen and white is given a pawn for a very good development, a very strong attack. After, let's say, c4, black continues with a6. So we're not developing anything, but the point of playing well against the Smith-Morra Gambit is that we're going to be able to keep the pawn advantage forever. And we're not risking anything right now because black's defense of pawns here is very solid. Besides, we have a goal of playing b5 and developing the dark square bishop in fianchetto the light square bishop in fianchetto, since the light square bishop doesn't have any future through this diagonal. So after a6 and knight f3, white can also, instead of knight f3, white can also play a4, which is the move that stops b5 from happening. We will go through that very soon. So after knight f3, black continues with b5, attacking the bishop. Now the bishop can either go to e2 or b3. Those are the moves that make more sense. We'll see them both. Bishop goes to b3. Let's start with this. The bishop still applies pressure on this diagonal. Bishop b7. We develop the bishop and we put more control over this very crucial d5 square. So now white will have to go on with queen e2 and castle and then rook d1. It can also do the moves like in different order, but nothing's going to change. So if white plays queen e2, we're going to play knight c6. And if white castles instead of queen e2, let's say castles, we're still going to play knight c6. And then queen e2 is happening anyway, and now it's our move. And the crucial move that a lot of players need to learn by heart in this situation is knight g to e7. More control over d5. The square d5 is crucial because white has a simple plan that we've all seen before. It's basically rook to d1, putting rook on the same file of the queen. The development of the dark square bishop will be fluid in e3, attacking very strong diagonal as well. And black king is completely suffocated. White is threatening this d5 move, knight d5 move. The knight there is a monster. When the bishop goes to e3, there's going to be an attack on the queen. The queen will be trapped. Queen c8 and then the knight will go to c7. I've lost many games myself to this opening in the past. So knight d5 is the kind of move. It's a theoretical sacrifice. If you take the knight, then the pawn with an attack on your pieces. When you move again, then you move the knight wherever you want to move the knight. Well, this is check anyway. So even if you move the knight, then the white pawn is going down, and it's a terrible position. And well, white is simply winning. So in this position, after castling, black plays knight c6, and now queen e2 is met by the crucial move knight g to e7, rook to d1. Old theory that we've all seen before, and now knight to g6. So this looks strange because we mentioned that the knight g to e7 is protected the square d5 further, but now we're moving away, and now the knight is in g6. Well, the reason is that now we are in perfect time to be able to castle, so we no longer have to play this passive setup just to defend d5, but now we're in time to castle. Black will only take two moves: development of the dark square bishop and castle. So let's look at three moves in this situation. e5, I've encountered this move a lot. It's there to put more control over d6, reducing the strength of the dark square bishop, especially making use of this pin. Then there's also bishop e3 and knight to d5. We're going to look at these three moves. So e5 is met by this move, queen b8. Now we have three attackers, and white has two defenders, the knight and the queen. And bishop f4 is not possible because it's unpre. So the knight in g6 was there for a good reason. With this move, black has a safe advantage. And even after rook e1 to further protect this pawn, black continues with bishop to e7. and afterwards black will castle, and black is out of danger. The pawn, the white pawn that white gave up at the beginning is kept free, and white has no compensation whatsoever. So that doesn't work. So e5 doesn't work. Another idea is bishop e3. This is met by black attacking the bishop with the knight, threatening to win the bishop pair. Black is really happy to give up this knight for the bishop and double up the pawns. The white bishop has got nowhere to go except c2. So after bishop c2, black continues to bishop e7, and as we noticed before, we are in perfect time to castle. We're out of danger now, and white didn't manage to make his compensation of development work. So after rook a to c1, best move by white, black can finally castle, and again black's out of danger. If black were to play again now, the move will be knight c4, winning the bishop pair, because there's an attack on pawn b2 and the bishop. So best move by white will have to know this very well, is knight to d2. Even then, black is out of danger, not only out of danger, but has a good advantage with rook c8, the idea of playing knight c2 anyway, and having a rook that can control the open file. Black is a clean pawn up and no weaknesses. And anyway, in this position, even if white doesn't play knight d2, white can try b3, but still, black's best move is rook c8, and the whole point was just to survive this gambit. We know how to survive it, and black's attacking this knight. It's very difficult to protect the knight. White will have to play some compromising moves, like for example, bishop d2 defending the knight is met by bishop a3 attacking the rook, then rook moving will be met by b4 with a skewer on the bishop in c2. So back at this position, the other move we're going to see is maybe the most interesting, is knight d5. The whole point basically. Now black cannot take the knight, of course, for the reason we said before. Black needs to make sure he's going to be able to castle before we allow the white player to open up all the lines. You know, this is going to be a disaster. So black has to play knight a5, attacking the bishop, and leave this knight in d5, because at the moment we really like our e6 pawn and the d7 pawn and f7 pawn like this, because our king needs protection and he needs the castle. So after knight d5, knight a5, we're going to look at two options, bishop c2 and bishop g5. These are two potential ideas. Let's quickly mention also the bishop e3, with the idea of playing bishop to b6 with an attack on the knight and an attack on the queen, protected by the knight. In this situation, fails to pawn simply taking the knight. And I know this looks scary, but nothing's wrong's going to happen. So pawn takes back, and in this case, the reason why we could take the knight is that it didn't come with a check of the queen. So what to do now? Simply, black will take the bishop, and black is up material, and there's no compensation for white. White might try to take the knight back, or to push the pawn in d6. This is interesting because the pawn is protecting the square e7, and now the white player might think of giving up the rook, but in this case bishop b6 will come with a check of the queen, and black will have to give up a lot of material. So let's say if d6 is played, the best move to continue is bishop takes knight with an attack on the queen, trying to misplace the queen away from the square of the check. So even if white were to take back with the pawn, keeping the queen on the same file of the king, this is very dangerous. Black's best move, this is very accurate, is bishop takes d6. Of course, rook taking the bishop will be met by knight taking the rook in a1. There's no compensation for white. There's no win for the white player here, and the black bishop is always free to come back to e7, and black can castle even if white decides to take this knight. So black is winning. So back at this position, after knight d5, we play knight a5. We mentioned how bishop e3 is met by us being able to take the knight. And after pawn takes back, we can take the bishop. Earlier we saw d6. What happens after pawn takes back? Well, now black plays f6. This move allows the black king to go to f7 and then develop and castle manually. Black has no weakness over the light squares. The light square bishop is gone, so the black player has nothing to worry. f6 is the most accurate move, and black continue with an extra piece. So again, in this position, knight d5 is met by knight a5, and after bishop to c2, black continues with rook to c8, putting the rook on an open file. Again, we still don't take the knight because We really can't at the moment. However, the black player successfully survived. It will continue the game with no weaknesses. And how does white continue right now? Well, white has to develop the pieces. The bishop cannot go to g5 because then the bishop will be attacked by the pawn. And now there's a pawn attacking the bishop and a pawn attacking the knight. And in this case, the king will have an escape in f7. So the knight becomes possible to be taken. So that's not possible. So in this position, if bishop goes to e3, normal developing move, black continues with knight to c4, attacking the bishop and this pawn. This is a typical motif in this game. And then the black player is managing to win the bishop pair. The motif here goes on with pawn attacking the knight. Just to make an example, we managed to survive the opening, so we're going to go to the next line soon. We just take the bishop. So after that, well, queen takes the knight is not possible because the bishop is hanging. So after knight takes back, black continues bishop a3. It's a motif here. It's stopping the rook from developing to the only other open file. Develops a bishop, basically allows the black players the castle. And white will have to go on with no advantages whatsoever in this game. Right, so here we are with bishop a3. Now it's white to move. Let's just go on a few more moves just to see how to approach the endgame. Knight d5 here doesn't work because you can just take it. Black has the possibility to simply move the king, and that's a free piece, and there is no attack by the black player going on. So because now the square f8 is accessible, so we can just take the knight in d5. So knight d5 is not possible. g3 is one of the best moves that can be played by white because it stops the knight from going to the super sneaky f4 square. After g3, black finally castles, and now rook a to b1. This is just to assume that white will continue by playing the absolute best moves. Even then, black has survived the opening well and is ready to go on to a winning endgame. Queen e7. The idea of the black player is to open the rook on the f file, especially considering that the f4 pawn is stopped by the knight, and it's going to be a weakness due to the g3 move. So after queen e7 and white's best move h4, black continues with f5. We'll now open the files. Taking the pawn in f5 is not good because then black takes back, and that just helps the black player to improve its position. Also because the knight in e3 is pinned, so the queen will be creating a weakness on the e file for white. If white continues with the plan h5 to attack the knight, then we can take the pawn in f4, in e4, and after pawn takes knight, rook takes knight, black's position is excellent. Pawn taken in h7 is met by king to h8, which will be using this pawn as a shield, and also because, well, if king takes the pawn in h7, then this bishop is attacking this diagonal, and the rook in f3 will no longer be protected by the pawn.